Now to Victoria, where, as I told you at the beginning of the show tonight, Energy and Resources Minister of the Victorian Government, Lily D'Ambrosio, she has told this URUC Justice Commission of Labor's plan to share the wealth of renewable projects and other power infrastructure with the state's Indigenous people. Now, on top of that, royalties on the state's mineral extraction, which earned the state more than $1 billion over the last decade, could also be targeted. Plus, of course, this is the minister who wants gas bans. So if you want a gas top cooker or you want to heat your hot water with gas domestically, you won't do it. And imagine what that's going to do to industry. For more on this, I'm joined by Victoria's Shadow Treasurer, Brad Rosewell, who is with us in the studio. Thanks for your time again.
Pleasure, Steve.
What are these policies going to do to attracting business to Victoria?
Well, it's the latest harebrained idea coming from Lily D'Ambrosio. For the 10 years that she's been in the job, Steve, she's been pledging to Victorians that energy prices are going to go down, down, down. That's her quote.
Yep.
It's what she said in the Parliament, and Victorians know, whether they be domestic users or businesses, only know that power prices have been going up, up, up. Now, her proposal will, in my mind, add further costs to users' energy bills. And in the middle of a cost of living crisis, that's not a good thing at all.
So we have various radicalised ministers in this government. Would you consider she is one?
Well, it's quite clear that the Labor government's energy policy is being driven by ideology here in Victoria and not practicality.
Well, this gas stuff's crazy.
Well, she does want to ban gas. She wants to ban the Bunnings barbecue. She wants to ban the wok. And I'd love to see how that goes down in some Labor-held seats in the Box Hill and other areas. It's not right. As a coalition, we've pledged to reverse that ban. There is gas in Victoria at the moment. It should come out of the ground. It should be used to bring energy prices down.
My reading of what she's talking about with these renewable projects is it doesn't matter whether you're constructing a solar farm or factory or you've got offshore wind turbines, and many of them far offshore. She is going to declare that the Indigenous group of people common to that area should benefit from those projects being put in. So I'm not a treasurer or a shadow treasurer, but wouldn't a company, many of them foreign owned, look at that and go, well, why would we invest there? We can go and do it somewhere else and we don't have to pay that penalty.
Well, that's one of the issues we have in Victoria, is that under Labor, and we're in our 10th year of the Andrews-Allen Labor government here, lots of investment has been going offshore, lots of investment has been going interstate. Again, it's not just non-Indigenous Victorians that pay power bills, it's also Indigenous Victorians, and I think every Victorian wants power prices to come down. If this latest thought bubble from Lily D'Ambrosio adds costs to energy, I don't think people can support it.
Her statement to the URUC Commission talked about how Indigenous Victorians, First Nations people, she refers them to, have not benefited from royalties. Now, again, forgive me, but the royalties from mining, of which you will inherit if you're treasurer, go to pay for schools and roads and hospitals, don't they?
And again,
doesn't everyone benefit from mining royalties?
And again, I make the point, it's every Victorian, whether you're Indigenous or not Indigenous, that relies upon governments to deliver services that improve lives. And after the last 10 years of Labor, our cost of living has gone up, our standard of living has gone down. And that's what you get when you elect a Labor government.
Well, the election's still, 2.5 years away, sadly for many Victorians. If these policies are legislated, they're going to be very hard to unpick.
Well,
are they not?
Maybe. Let's wait and see. At this point in time, what the Minister has said has been a thought bubble within this commission. Let's see if it translates to legislation before the Parliament and have it out at that point.
So the state budget Tuesday week.
Correct, 10 days away.
You've been keeping your eye on that, doing a lot of work on the reaction to it. What are you hearing we may be in for?
Well, you don't need to hear me, Steve. You need to hear what Labor are saying, and they're already saying that it's going to be a horror budget. They're already saying that.
Well, if that's the government saying it,
there are going
God
to be
help
cuts.
us.
Yeah, but what they won't guarantee is that there won't be any new or increased taxes in this budget. It's really hard to find a house in Victoria. It's really hard to find a rental. Rental affordability, availability has gone up. Schooling standards have gone down. We're in the middle of a health crisis with ambulances ramping outside hospitals right around the state. There are a bunch of things to be fixed, and yet the Labor government's obsession seems to be with expanding and paying public servants more. And these aren't frontline public servants. These are pen-pushing fat cat bureaucrats sitting far removed from the reality of a community, their priorities are wrong. And Victorians are starting to realise just that.
Wherever I go in the community, I'm asked about land tax and the changes to land tax and the impact that's having on people with investment properties or a second house or an investment business or a building. I have asked you this before. Can you repeal that?
We can, and I'd love to, and I'd love to deal with payroll tax, and I'd love to deal with stamp duty and any number of other taxes. But at the moment, my daily interest payment, if I was Treasurer today, is $15 million a day in Victoria, climbing to $24 million a day just before the election. So that is Labor's legacy. I'm pitching myself as a credible alternative. If I just go around willy-nilly with policy on the run saying we're going to scrap this, this and that without a decent comprehensive plan to pay for it, then I'm just as bad as they are, and my job is to provide a credible alternative.
So will we find out what you'll do about land tax prior to the next election, or will we find out what you'll do about it after the next budget?
I make a guarantee that before the next election we will have a comprehensive tax policy, but we're not waiting until the next election, Steve. In July last year, I launched a tax discussion paper. We'll have our response to that tax discussion paper after the budget, released after the budget, and that should indicate to the Victorian people and to people who want to come back here and reinvest here and make a home back here, as well as those businesses that just want government to get off their back and to enable them to do what they do best, a pretty fair indication about what our priorities will be.
So outside your portfolio, you went to 3 Anzac Day services yesterday in your electorate. We saw a number of people pro-Palestinian protest on the steps of Parliament House. Appropriate on Anzac Day or not?
My father served our nation in World War II, and I'm very proud of him. It's nothing sacred anymore. I don't think you'll find a Victorian, I don't think you'll find an Australian that disagrees with the principle of a right to protest. But Anzac Day is a sacred day. Anzac Day should be a protected day, and that was frankly disgraceful.
No trouble where you were, and I wanted to ask you. I mentioned earlier the fact that there was a lot of young people at the Anzac dawn services in particular, but also at the parade yesterday that I saw. We keep getting told young Australians are not proud of their country. I think that was disproved yesterday.
Absolutely it was. And as a father of two, with a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, as I was putting my kids to bed last night, I read them the book Anzac Ted, because it is true that there are 102,041 Australian men and women who have died in the service of this nation to protect the freedoms that we enjoy and perhaps take for granted today. That is a legacy that must continue. I'm doing my bit, and my experience at the Anzac services that I attended on Anzac Day is that lots of families are doing theirs.
Well, as someone who's been to both Gallipoli and the Western Front, I couldn't agree with you more. Brad Rosewell, thank you very much for your time.
Real pleasure.